昨天相亲嘛，我跟相亲对象吃完饭，我说时间还早，我们去商场逛逛吧。到了商场呢，我就看上了一款包包，也没有多贵，大概几千块钱的样子。我背着的时候呢，他说这款包包挺适合你的，很符合你今天的穿搭。结果去买单的时候呢，他竟然让我自己付款，我就挺惊讶的。我说不应该是你买给我吗？这个小气的男人竟然说我们才第一次见面，还不知道我们合不合适，我为什么要给你买包？
Do you know why this little fairy wears a mask while shooting her video? She knows very well that what she is doing is actually quite shameful, but she still wants to complain. She believes that when she has a meal, goes shopping, or buys things with a guy, it is only natural that the guy should pay the bill. When the guy didn't pay, she got angry and even recorded a video to complain. It's really quite funny. Even while filming the video, she was wearing a mask, which shows that she knows this is embarrassing, yet she still wants to vent. This behavior is called wanting to take advantage while pretending to be justified. In fact, there are quite a few girls like this in our world. Some of them are gold diggers who take advantage of dating or going on blind dates to get free meals, drinks, and even guide the guys into buying things for them. Some have even formed professional groups. What are professional groups? I once saw a video about it. In many big cities, there is a group of besties, and each one has several suitors. Every time a suitor invites one of them to dinner, she will invite her besties to join. In this way, 4 or 5 girls rotate throughout the month, and they don't have to spend a penny while enjoying free meals and entertainment everywhere. There are also some girls who, though not gold diggers, have been influenced by some wrong ideas. They always feel that if a guy is pursuing them, he must spend money on them. If a guy is unwilling to spend money on them, they think the guy is stingy, not sincere, and doesn't truly like them. So, these girls use this method to test the guy, and when the guy doesn't pay, they assume he's not suitable and reject him. As a result, they end up becoming older single women. Looking around the world, no women in any country or society behave as shamelessly as some girls here. Not only are they unconcerned with their behavior, but they also self-righteously expect men to pay for them. This makes one reflect. Isn't our society advocating for female independence? Haven't we given enough rights, tolerance, and indulgence to women? Why have we raised so many selfish and spoiled giant babies? Of course, speaking of this, men also bear some responsibility for women becoming like this. There are too many men who are simps, always trying to please girls by buying them meals, sending them red envelopes, and buying them gifts. Over time, these girls begin to think that men spending money on them is just natural. As a result, they become more and more self-centered in relationships. So, why are there so many men willing to be simps? To put it simply, it's because they lack access to female resources and are afraid of losing out, so they resort to flattering the girls. They lack dating experience and think that as long as they are good to the girl, she will like them. But in reality, this low emotional intelligence behavior not only disrupts the dating market, but also drives up the cost of blind dating, turning more girls into gold diggers and making the men themselves into backups. That's why I always emphasize that men must pay attention to a girl's spending attitude when dating. If a girl is also willing to pay for your meals and contribute, then she might be worth pursuing. But if every date ends with you paying, and this happens more than twice, then it's probably not worth continuing. A girl like that isn't sincerely interested in you. She just wants you to be her bill payer. In the end, I want to tell all my brothers out there, increasing your emotional intelligence and gaining more female resources is the key for men to take control in relationships. Don't be a simp anymore. Learn how to test a girl during dating to see if she's worth pursuing.
昨天遇到一个相亲男，连900块钱的饭钱都不愿意付 ，AA 也不行，到底是什么情况呢？
Last night, something happened that left us feeling somewhat helpless. My friend had arranged to meet a blind date, but the man was unwilling to pay for the 900 yuan supper. Here's what happened. I was getting ready to rest last night when my friend suddenly called me, inviting me to join her for a late-night snack. She said a guy she met for a blind date had asked her out for supper, but since it was their first time meeting and it was quite late, she felt a bit nervous and hoped I could go with her for moral support. I didn't really want to go at first, but after her repeated requests, I reluctantly agreed. When I arrived at the designated supper spot, I found out that it wasn't just me accompanying her. My friend had called 5 other people to join us. So, adding me, the blind date had to face 7 girls eating supper together. I thought the guy might feel awkward or upset, as it was the first time they were meeting, and he had to treat so many people. But to my surprise, the guy remained very polite, warmly inviting us to sit down and even saying we could order anything we liked. My friend had previously told me that the man had a good job, decent income, looked okay, and drove a nice car. Overall, he seemed to be a well-off person. During supper, I noticed that the blind date was very talkative, dominating the conversation all evening, and he knew his table manners quite well. We all ate for more than 2 hours. When it got late, my friend subtly hinted that it was time for the guy to pay the bill, as he had initiated the invitation. However, when the man heard it was time to pay, his previously lively demeanor suddenly changed. He claimed his stomach wasn't feeling well and excused himself to the restroom. Unexpectedly, he didn't come out, staying in the restroom for over half an hour. We waited for a long time and eventually asked the waiter to knock on the restroom door and check if he needed help. He responded that he didn't and would come out once he felt better. We were left waiting awkwardly outside for another half hour, and some of the girls began speculating whether he was deliberately hiding in the restroom to avoid paying the bill. My friend felt a bit uncomfortable hearing those remarks. So, I told my friend that since it was the first blind date and he had invited her, paying the bill was naturally his responsibility. My friend sighed and said, "Forget it. If this guy doesn't want to pay, I'll do it this time. I just won't meet him again if he asks me out next time." In the end, my friend reluctantly paid the bill. Not long after my friend finished paying, the blind date finally came out of the restroom. He smiled awkwardly at us and said, "Sorry to keep you waiting for so long." Seeing that my friend had already paid the bill, he sheepishly said, "I invited you all out for supper, yet I made you pay. I'll treat you next time." My friend just smiled lightly and said, "No need, we've all eaten enough for tonight. We can go home now." The man didn't say much more, and neither did my friend, but I was feeling quite frustrated inside. A man invites a woman out on a blind date, and for their first meeting, they have supper, costing 900 yuan. That shouldn't be much for him, especially since he supposedly has a decent income. But he used this tactic to avoid paying the bill, hiding in the restroom, which left us speechless. If he didn't like my friend, he could have just cancelled the supper. Why go through the trouble of hiding in the restroom to dodge the bill? Do you think this guy didn't want to pay because he didn't like my friend, or is there another reason?
相亲吃饭1960，男生拒绝付款。
Recently, I received feedback from a female member, who was very dissatisfied with the blind date I introduced, saying that the man was very unreliable. Out of concern, I asked her for more details. She told me that it was her first time meeting the man that day, and the meal ended up costing 1,960 yuan. What's even more exaggerated is that she didn't go to meet the man alone, but brought along her parents, friends, and a large group of people. After the meal, the man finally spoke up. First, he exchanged some pleasantries with the elders and friends at the table, saying, "Uncle, aunt, and everyone else, I hope you've all had enough to eat." "That's great." Then he turned to the woman and asked, "We've had our meal and met each other today, so let me ask you, do you fancy me?" Surprisingly, the woman was quite frank and directly replied, "No, I don't fancy you." Upon hearing this, the man immediately responded, "Since you don't fancy me, fine then, boss. The 1,960 yuan for this meal will be paid by this lady." The woman was suddenly upset and angrily questioned him, "We're on a blind date, so why aren't you paying for the meal?" The man, however, calmly replied, "If you fancied me, I would definitely pay. But since you don't, of course I won't." The woman was very confused and continued to ask, "But I brought my parents and friends today, why didn't you make it clear from the start?" It seemed the man had reached his limit and coldly said, "Oh, so you do know? Honestly, I've had enough of you. It's one thing to bring your parents to a blind date, but you also brought so many third wheels. Are you here for a blind date or a banquet? You brought so many of your girlfriends along, what do you take me for? A meal ticket? Do you have any respect?" After saying this, the man decisively stormed out, completely ending this awkward blind date gathering. After hearing about this, I was speechless too, and now I have to find another match for this woman. The question now is, do you think the man's actions were justified? Or was he too impulsive?
为什么年龄越大的女孩相亲遇到抠的？
Some people might ask why older women, when going on blind dates, are more likely to encounter men who are insincere, inconsiderate, or even try to take advantage of them. Some men don't even bother to buy a woman a cup of coffee on their first meeting. Last night, a 38-year-old unmarried woman raised this question with me. She's a new member of our matchmaking group. Her annual income exceeds 200,000 yuan, she leads a stable life, and she's in pretty good condition. She was introduced to a man by a friend, who specifically emphasized that this man had been carefully selected. Since her friend is also in the same profession as I am, we're both matchmakers, this woman thought her friend would have put effort into choosing someone suitable for her. So, she was full of expectations for this blind date. The man is 1 year older than her, 39, divorced with no children, a middle-level manager at a state-owned enterprise, with a good income and height. For men around 40 years old, someone with these kinds of conditions would be considered a relatively high-quality match in the eyes of many. However, at their first meeting, this man only ordered a cup of coffee for himself and didn't order any drinks or food for the woman. At first, the woman thought perhaps the man wasn't interested in her, which was why he didn't order anything for her. But to her surprise, when they were leaving, the man actively asked for her contact information. During their subsequent conversations, the man made oily and suggestive remarks, even jokingly asking, "When are you going to call me your husband?" The woman felt very uncomfortable with this, and she shared her feelings with the person who had introduced them. What she didn't expect was that the matchmaker advised her not to jump to conclusions and suggested she give the man more chances and not give up too easily over just a few words. Her family also thought she was being too picky, saying her standards for her blind dates were too strict and that she should be more open-minded. This left the woman very confused. She told me that she often meets men like this on blind dates, who drop oily hints in their words. When she wants to reject them, her family criticizes her, saying she's too picky. At one point, it even made her question herself, wondering if she was indeed being too demanding, which was why she couldn't find a suitable partner. So she came to me for help, asking me to analyze whether the problem lies with her or with her blind dates. In my personal opinion, her situation is quite common among single women aged 35 to 40, especially when their blind dates are around the same age, with relatively good conditions and no significant shortcomings. Such oily experiences become more frequent. This is because these men often know their advantages in terms of appearance, financial stability, and other aspects, so they tend to take advantage of women during blind dates. If they're meeting younger women, they might behave more seriously, but when dealing with older women, they often adopt a play-it-by-ear attitude. These men are aware that their conditions make them quite popular among older single women, so they don't put in much effort or spend much money, sometimes not even willing to pay for a cup of coffee, all while trying to take advantage of the situation. Therefore, I advise older single women to be extra cautious during blind dates and not be swayed by the outward conditions of these men.
哎，这次相亲啊又黄了。现在的男生啊真的是太自私了。
Recently, my blind date failed again. I am 34 years old this year, and I feel that some guys nowadays can be unbelievably selfish, just like a stingy iron rooster who never gives away a feather. Recently, I met a guy, and at first, we had a good chat. On our first meeting, he was very gentlemanly, treated me to dinner, and even took care of the bill. At that time, I thought he was a reliable person. But as we went on more dates, I slowly noticed his attitude starting to change. Initially, he would pay, but later, he began hinting that we should split the bill, AA, and sometimes he even waited for me to take the initiative to pay. I am not saying that the man should always pay for every meal, but his stingy and calculating attitude made me feel uncomfortable. Once, we planned to go out, and he meticulously calculated every expense down to the decimal point, even splitting the cost of a bottle of water. There was no sense of understanding between us as a couple. I tried to communicate with him, telling him that in a relationship, we shouldn't be so calculative and should consider each other's feelings more, maintaining a certain level of mutual understanding. However, he confidently responded by saying that in this day and age, we are all young people, and everyone should be independent. Even in relationships, everything should be based on equality, and no one owes anyone anything. His words left me cold, as it felt like he was treating our relationship like a business deal, with everything clearly priced, too rigid, and lacking any romance. What made me especially disappointed was when my birthday came around. I had been looking forward to him at least giving me a birthday gift, even if it was just a simple handwritten card, which would have made me feel valued. But he casually said, "Gifts are too superficial. Eating together is more practical." At that moment, I felt completely disheartened. I know that material things aren't the only measure of a relationship, but what I care about more is the sincerity of being willing to give for each other. His stinginess made me feel an unprecedented sense of loneliness, as if I wasn't getting the attention I deserved in this relationship. It seemed like there were obstacles between us from the very beginning. I couldn't help but ask myself, have men become so cautious and calculative when pursuing girls nowadays? Or was I just unlucky to meet such a person? I feel very confused and disappointed. I long for the day in the future when I can meet someone who is truly willing to treat me sincerely and spend a lifetime together with me. That person won't let our love fade because of money but will make it shine even brighter through mutual understanding and devotion.
I just saw a girl complaining online today. She mentioned a blind date who asked her out, and after spending the entire afternoon together, he didn't even buy her a cup of milk tea. This made her very upset. Actually, this kind of mentality is almost non-existent among women in the West. The question is, why is there such a huge difference in mindset between women in the East and the West? Why is it that Western women wouldn't even think this way? The reason lies in the fact that Western women fundamentally believe that they are equal to men because they have independent personalities and a mindset of equality. Because of this, they don't feel that men must buy them milk tea during a date. On the contrary, they might even feel that they could be the one buying something for the man. This is the way Western women think. However, in our society, many women who call themselves goddesses shout about independence on the surface, advocating for so-called female consciousness awakening, claiming that they can also make money to buy cars and houses. But when it comes to dating, they are particularly calculating and stingy. Don't you think this is funny? This mindset exactly reveals a phenomenon in our society, which is the so-called selective feminism mentality. Many girls always think of themselves as the disadvantaged group, believing that men should cover all the expenses during a date, even if it's just for a cup of milk tea. They think that men should pay for them while they enjoy everything without lifting a finger. This idea seems deeply ingrained and hard to change. The problem is if they insist on holding on to this belief, why don't they just admit it? Instead, they put on a front of being independent and confident. Don't you find this contradictory attitude of pretending to be independent while actually being dependent quite ridiculous? Many women cannot even achieve personal independence. So how can they talk about gender equality? Moreover, when you're on a date, why can't you be the one to buy something for the other person? It's just a cup of milk tea. Why be so petty? If you're not willing to buy someone a cup of milk tea, does that mean you're not interested in them at all? If you don't like the person, why do you still expect them to buy you milk tea? What's even more puzzling is that when they don't buy you milk tea, you start complaining. This exposes another issue in our society. Many women like to use emotions as a means of transaction. They think that as a woman, just spending an afternoon with a man should earn them some kind of reward. In simple terms, many so-called goddesses don't even understand what love is. Their mindset is not based on love, but on transactions. We all know that real love requires mutual effort and giving. Mutual giving means that you buy me milk tea, and I buy you milk tea. You spend money on me, and I spend money on you. This is what equal relationships look like. But here, many goddesses only expect men to spend money on them, to buy them milk tea. How is that love? Isn't that just a transaction? Treating yourself as a commodity is a seriously twisted mindset, isn't it? I have to say, the thinking of these goddesses has deeply rooted itself into their consciousness and is difficult to change. Whenever I see this phenomenon, I feel deeply hopeless. I feel hopeless for two reasons. First, the future of a country is determined by its women. Second, many men in our society are in a very tragic situation. Of course, we men also need to reflect on ourselves. Why do women have such thoughts when they go on dates with us? It's because too many men are used to being simps, used to being the ones who unilaterally give during dates. Over time, women naturally start to believe that men paying for them is just the way it should be. If we want to change this societal mindset, men must start with themselves. We need to abandon the traditional male supremacist mindset of being the provider, stop being simps, and truly practice gender equality. Only then can the distorted social atmosphere and twisted female perspectives have a chance to change. Otherwise, this phenomenon will persist forever. To all of you watching, do you agree with my views? Feel free to leave your comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us, and we will continue to bring you better content. Thank you again for watching, and see you next time.